This conference is about technology, about innovation, and I'm someone who runs a tech business, but half of my heart is also in politics and societal things. And I think this is an area where we've seen one of the biggest innovations and the biggest experiment of the past 100 years that humanity has done. And to me, this is the European Union. Why? I come from an area in the west of Germany, a very industrial area, where you have a hard time finding a house that's older than 60, 70 years. After the Second World War, all of Europe was destroyed. When you see pictures of Berlin after the war, it's just rubble. There was nothing there. And then countries got together and said, let's build the institutions that enable us to collaborate, to build a new future, to build a peaceful continent, and to, progress and prosper. And to me, this is one of the biggest innovations of humanity in the past century. Now, Europe is in trouble, right? Brexit, we don't know how to deal with migrants coming to Europe. Greece, it's on its brink, huge youth unemployment. So as a tech company, we were thinking, what can we do? We found this fascinating, what can we do in this space? And we do market research. We do micro-surveys across the world, across 100 countries. We ask millions of people through a process of programmatic sampling what they think, what they do for commercial purposes. And then we're thinking, how can we leverage that power to understand what Europe thinks? Because we believe that Europe is at a point right now where it can't go further without understanding what people want, without asking them, without reflecting this in decisions that we're taking collectively. It's been a very technocratic process over the past decades, and we now need to understand, what do people want? So this talk is about some of the experiments we've run there over the past couple of years in leveraging our technology to understand what people want. And I brought you 3 examples out of hundreds on which we've collected data. One is on basic income, because we think it's very relevant for the tech community. Most of us build or finance disruptive innovation that automate things, that make things more efficient, but that also change the way people work, the way social safety nets function, and the way we function as a society. The second one is populism and the rise of right-wing parties in Germany, France, and elsewhere. And in light of I think yesterday Malta was the latest country who legalized gay marriage, and Germany did so a few weeks ago on some of the most societal aspects, identity, and measuring this. So let's start with basic income. We gave people a definition of what this is and asked them, would you be for it or against it? And it's quite surprising. 2/3 of it were for it. Now you might say, okay, it's giving people free money, but there was actually a referendum in Switzerland last year where people rejected the notion of basic income. So that was for us a very interesting, and this was quite big in the media. This result. Then we looked at another surprising thing here is, and this is across all of Europe, when you look at the different demographics, it's pretty stable. Whether people work in manual jobs, whether they do more thinking jobs that most of us do, whether they're young, whether they're old, low education, high education, low income, high income, it's a pretty stable result over these demographics. Then we asked ourselves, why do you want to have basic income? Because many critics say, if we have this, people would stop working. And no, actually, that's the next. The reason to support is reduces financial anxiety, it creates more equality of opportunity, and encourages financial independence. And then we asked how would this affect what you do? Because there was a lot of concern that people would just, stop working if they get a basic income. And most people said they could just pick one. Most people said, actually, I wouldn't, it wouldn't affect my work choices. Some people said I would spend more time with the family. Others, a few said I would work less, do more volunteering work. Next topic that we looked at was populism. And some of you will be aware of this new kind of way of thinking. We had the classic division into left and right politics, and now it's becoming more this kind of open society, closed society division. One of the reasons why Trump was very successful is because he mobilized voters who would traditionally vote for the Democrats, from working class type of voters who then switched to Republicans who would traditionally not vote for them. So this we found exciting, and what we did was we took a very polarizing kind of worldview. This was defined by Stephen Shakespeare of YouGov and Douglas Rivers, which essentially puts extreme statements in front of people. So on the one side you have this, we have to protect ourselves, our lives are threatened by terrorists, criminals, immigrants, and our priority is to protect ourselves against these, right? And then on the other hand, you have more this kind of drawbridge down, this kind of, it's a big, beautiful world, mostly full of good people, and we must find a way to embrace each other and not allow ourselves to become isolated, right? So we told people across, tens of thousands of people across Europe, if you had to choose, which one would you choose? You can't choose anything else. You kind of have to choose one of the two. And we did that also in the US. And the result was pretty similar, right? Roughly 50-50. So 50% of the people said, we have to protect ourselves. 50% were kind of like, it's a big, beautiful world. When we looked, however, at what the party distribution was, so people who would vote for the Front National, the right-wing German party, for Donald Trump, the picture is completely different. You have almost 90% of the FN voters are this kind of like drawbridge up. We have to protect ourselves, against migrants. And then when we look deeper into this, it emerged that this kind of polarization is actually becoming one of the biggest single predictors of how people vote, right? So people who have this kind of, we need to protect ourselves, are 6 times more likely to vote for the Front National, or in Germany for the AfD. Many more than other, income, education, these types of criteria. So that was quite interesting for us. Final little case. Gay marriage. We were interested in understanding how, what share of the population actually identifies as LGBT. And the reason here is, from a research perspective, is that there's no data set. It's not like you go to register at the Bürgeramt here in Germany or elsewhere and say, I'm gay, and there's an official statistic, right? So we wanted to find out and wanted to use our system to find out. We used two different types of questions. One is more straightforward, to identify as LGBT, and the other one is from a Kinsey scale, which is a bit more nuanced to kind of also include gray areas. And the result was across all of Europe around 6 to 9%. So 6% in the first case, 9% in the second. It's probably somewhere in that range. When we look then at the different countries, and this is really interesting, there's a huge spread, right? So in Hungary, it's 1.5%. In Germany, it's 7.5%, right? So which, biologically shouldn't be the case. But one of the things it shows you, and then when you look at the countries themselves, there's also not only difference in countries, but also difference across gender. What this tells you is to always be skeptical when someone talks to you about survey results, because the way you frame the question or the cultural environment in which you ask has an effect on how people answer, right? I don't personally think that there are 5 times as many people who identify as lesbian, as homosexual in Germany as in Hungary, but it was an anonymous survey, so people, it's the same process. We have lots more of these results. You can go to our website to find out more. Before I finish, I wanted to take a couple of minutes already to answer questions, and then I have a little something for you in the end.
They don't want to ask questions of the question asker. Okay, let's see. Thank you for the hand out there.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I was just wondering, the universal basic income survey results, really surprising, both in how high people were pro basic income, and also in how small the dispersion in the results were across the different groups. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about the sample size that you were getting and maybe a potential bias in the sample that might have existed in the survey?
Well, the sample size is across it's all 28 European countries, so it's in the tens of thousands. What we do, we look at different, we build demographic groups in different countries, so hundreds and hundreds of different quartiles. So from, women who are of a certain age and live in Eastern Poland to, men of another age, low education, high education in Poland, and then you aggregate this, and then you weight it to make sure that you have an adequate representation of the, of the overall population. The standard error in these results is about 2.5%. Does that answer your question? Or?
I'd be surprised then why, if it's such an overwhelming majority of people, why hasn't it become policy yet, I suppose?
That's a good question. But we also see, a big, public support for other areas that are not policy yet. So we've had, huge public support for gay marriage in Germany for quite a few years, and it's only now become policy. It's tricky. In Switzerland, they decided to put it to a referendum. It's in reality, it's much more complex. It kind of tries to change the whole social security system, so it's not that easy as, just asking people a question, hey, shall we do this or not? Yeah?
Cool. Do we have another question?
Hello. I have a question. The consumers of your results, I guess they were previously used to getting results from people with a pen and paper going around streets, possibly, no? And do they consider this way of collecting data now more legitimate or a substitute? How do your consumers or consumers of these results react to your new method of doing things?
You mean clients, right?
Yeah.
This is one of, I didn't want to talk too much about this because this is what I usually talk about. It's like what we do as a company. We leverage, there are billions of smartphone users around the world who use them every day, and we've built a technology to be able to access them in a more dynamic way than is previously possible. So in order to get this whole sampling to the next level, so whereas previously you asked a few thousand people. Pen and paper or by phone, hey, can you, do you drink Coca-Cola? Do you like your fridge? So now we do that at a massive scale across 100 countries, millions of people every month, to give us answers, which obviously increases the scope of what you can do, and in many cases also the quality of the data quite a bit. We work with major, world's leading market research agencies, consumer goods companies. This is kind of the bread and butter of our business, and this is the stuff that we do because we like it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next question. Nico, I'm curious, what are the different methods that you've used to incentivize users to answer the surveys?
It depends a lot on the country and the different channels. These things, people are pretty keen to kind of answer these questions. So some of the more political, societal things, they're happy to give you answers without any incentivization environment, or to see how others responded. If we do the more consumer research, people usually do expect a compensation for their time. And in our case, it's mostly through paywalls where they get something for free if they ask questions, virtual currencies, in games, prepaid credits, any type of incentivization that we can find. Yeah.
Nice. That's a pretty wide range. We got a last question from the audience, or shall we let Nico finish? Go ahead and finish us out.
So to kind of sum up where we come from, we believe Europe is one of the biggest innovations, at least in the political sphere, maybe not in the tech sphere. And we were asking questions to understand what Europe thinks, right? And I wanted to open this up to you to send us questions that we will gather until the end of July. And then we'll select 10 or so of them to run this and publish them with the next wave. So if you have any ideas, any good ideas of what you want to ask Europe as a continent, what it thinks about this, that, send your questions to us. We'll run them, and then we'll publish the results, and you can publish the results or whatever you want to do with it. Yeah?
Awesome. Thank you so much.